Hello everyone and welcome to episode 2 of Becoming Famous for My Sculptures. In this episode I try to become famous by making an otter shaman out of wood. And more specifically it's an otter summoning an epic wave. At least I'm going to try my best to make it look epic. The wood I'm working with this time is black walnut, just like in the previous episode. And I personally think it's cool that both of the sculptures were made from the same block. Here I remove some bark. My plan is to make the wave bend in a way so that the area affected by the bark will be completely removed. And now it's time for the bandsaw. I do not have the right saw blade for this task. It would be a lot better to use a thinner blade with a bit larger teeth, I think. And of course I'm saving all these small bits of walnut I cut off, because as every carpenter slash woodworker knows, it has potential. It has potential. It has potential. So not only does the bandsaw save me time by being able to remove large bits of wood, but more importantly it also creates some anchor points for me to work with, since I'm getting the actual outline of the design, at least from one direction. The audio was gone in these clips. I'm not sure why. Now it is time to try to discover the sculpture within this block. I'm starting with the easiest areas, and as I go along it becomes more and more easy to visualize the next step to take. I am working with many different tools, but for this step a small chainsaw would probably be the best. So far no mistakes. The wave is starting to emerge, but now I feel like I have to work on the otter, to figure out how it will connect to the wave. And here is a free pro tip for woodworkers. Order 20 pencils to have in the workshop, and when you cannot find the one you just used, just get a new one. Eventually you will have pencils laying all over the place, and there will never be a time you cannot find one. You could also keep your workshop clean, but I don't have time for that. The method I start with on the otter is to round off most of the corners. I do not plan to go far with the details on the otter, since the actual animal is very smooth looking. In the design I made I had some musculature showing, but I will discard that. However, I would like to make a lion carving in the future where the musculature is prominent. Maybe in a very powerful pose. So now that I have a more clear understanding of the otter wave connection, I can go back to working on the wave. It still needs a lot of rough carving, but to be honest, it is the most important step. Perhaps you saw some smoke in the workshop. It is because I worked with an old 40 grit sanding disc on angle grinder. When it gets clogged up with sawdust, it starts to burn the wood more than it cuts it. Now that the wave is really starting to take shape, I just got an idea that one day I will make a similar carving like this, just a lot bigger. I could imagine it looking pretty cool in someone's mansion, as a statement piece. The walnut I'm using for this otter cost me about $200. It is 3 2-inch thick boards glued together. It was originally sold as guitar wood, but I asked if I could have them glued together into a block. And now disaster is soon about to happen. I did a horrible job gluing a stick to the walnut, so I will not be doing that mistake again. The thing is, I had time to catch it mid-air, but I was a bit shocked. So obviously, having this happen made me pretty sad, and I kind of felt like the perfection of the artwork was ruined. However, when I repaired it, I was able to connect the two pieces very close to how they was in the first place. So I was absolutely motivated to finish the sculpture. Here's how the repair looked. I went ahead and made the surface of the small log I used rougher to prevent disaster to strike again. As I went ahead with this glue up, I got this crazy thought that perhaps I should clean my workshop. Then I got to my senses and started thinking, what a silly thought to have. It's not like it would make things easier. Or maybe it would. So you can see that there are some lighter wood at the bottom of the wave and at the tail area of the otter. It will be very interesting to see how that will end up looking after I apply the oil. Now that the repair has been successful and I have mentally recovered from the incident, it is time to move on to carving the semi-details of the wave. From experience of working with walnut, I have discovered that having a lot of details is not necessarily a good thing. I want the lines in the walnut to show clearly, and that kind of does get camouflaged if there's too many details. So I just want to mention that my health has been improving some over the past months, and I am planning to open my shop again and sell pendants. I'm looking forward to announce my plans for it at the end of the video. Even at this stage you can see the figure in the walnut. The lines in the wood here are far apart from each other. I consider that a good thing, and I think it will improve the end result. There are some spectacular wood on the market with incredible figure and colors, but as it is right now it is out of my price range. For me, this gives me a lot of motivation to keep working, since working with spectacular wood like that is a goal I want to achieve in the future. If you have any technical questions about the tools I use and other things involving how I work, feel free to ask in the comment section. I will be happy to try to provide the information you need. Some people tell me that they have been inspired by me to try out wood carving, and it makes me very humble to know that. And here is how the sculpture is looking right now. I am happy I went so deep with the main wave. It will create some really nice contrasts with proper lighting. And unfortunately I did not film a lot of the detailing of the wave. I cannot remember how this happened. Maybe I got too caught up with work. So small update, I've done 3 days of hand sanding of the wave, so now the next step is to start with the head. The good thing about hand sanding before I do finish it all is that I'm not left with a week of hand sanding at the end of the project, which is demoralizing to put it lightly. So let's start with the head. I just quickly wanted to show you the references I will use when I work on the otter's head. My advice would be to find pictures with dramatic lighting, since it makes it easier to read the shapes that the subject consists of. Nothing beats a good model though, but I do not have that. However, during the filming of this video, I have had an otter walking past my window of my living room 3 times. I live close to the coast and there are many otters around where I live. I think the population might have increased because this year I see more otter tracks than I have ever done before. I don't mind, since I think otters are very graceful animals. They seem to have this calm to them. Okay, so let's work on the feet. This is the last part before I have carved all the important parts of the sculpture. This makes me kind of nervous because most of the project has gone so well and I always have this fear of screwing up in the end. But after each successful project my confidence grows. I still have these negative thoughts, but I know I will do just fine. By the way, have you seen a more fancy pencil sharpener? When I made the design for this sculpture, I started with just some tiny sketches to get an overall feel. This is a lot better because it saves time and it quickly gives you an idea of how each element of the design is put together. I would strongly advise against starting with a large drawing if you plan to create a successful design. I will be cheating a bit here, since a real otter has 5 toes and I am only going to create 4. I made this decision because I had carved the wooden part for the foot too small. I am happy with how the foot turned out. It looks pretty natural in my opinion, and I made sure to keep it pretty thick to prevent it breaking off. Alright, so here's the sculpture, how it looks now. I've done pretty much all the carving that needs to be done, and what is left now is hand sanding. And a good way to support me is to subscribe if you want to. So yeah, I'll go into the hand sanding and then it's time for the oil. So I sanded the entire sculpture all the way from 80 grit to 240. This time I made sure to do it at stages, finishing one fineness of sanding before I started with the next one. With my previous sculpture I did not do this, and it really gave me a headache through the entire sanding process. It was kind of a nightmare. Done with the hand sanding. It took like 15 hours maybe, so next step now is to cut it off this one and finish the bottom. This is a big event for me, the separation of the sculpture from the small log. I made sure to cut about a centimeter away from the sculpture so it wouldn't get damaged. At this stage I am being very careful, because I know how much hard work I have already put into the creation. So, putting the log back to the firewood stack where it belonged. Removing the excess part of the log I cut off took an unnecessary amount of time. Next time I will probably risk it and make a cut closer to the sculpture. I like to carve a small signature into my larger projects, and I also like to include a date. The weird thing I notice here though is that I have completely screwed up the date. I believe I did this the 24th of February, not 4th of February. Oh well, it's not a big deal I think. So I looked more carefully into it, and I can see that I wrote 24th, but I carved 4th. So I guess the mystery is solved. I am applying Liberon finishing oil on this sculpture, and look at the amazing color that the oil brings out. And I think it became particularly incredible on this sculpture because it had so many flat, large surface areas for the wood to really shine. So we are getting very close to the final reveal. After many hours of hard work, I am proud to present to you the finished Otter Shaman. Thank you all so much for watching. That's 2 sculptures out of 12 made, and I'm getting closer to my goal of having 12 sculptures for my exhibition at the end of the year. And this is a big thing for me. I've never had an exhibition or been at anything like that with my work, so I will try to film it when it happens and share my experience with you. I have also opened a Patreon where I share my sketches and doodles and some other things, and my future patrons will be credited at the end of my future videos. And I opened my shop as well. Here you can find some pendants I sell, and everything I make on this website will go towards my dream of building my own workshop. So with that being said, thank you all so much for the support, and I hope to see you in episode 3 of becoming famous for my sculptures. And in episode 3, I will try to make this. It's gonna be a challenge, but I'm up for it. So have a good day everyone, and I hope to see you in that episode.